Hi, everyone, and welcome. I want to thank you so much for coming to out and supporting ESMOA and the exhibition Grief 66. This exhibition was planned a few years back in the teens of 2018 and 19, while my mother was passing away due to dementia. Also, we were dealing with the cult of a new president and the onset of a disease that was beyond the beyond, and that was COVID. So during this period, I just thought of, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on, it's sort of sadness. I couldn't get out of the space, and I wanted to think about what grief meant. And so there was the sadness of going to lose my parent. There was the sadness of the election, and then there was the sadness, chaos, and uncertainty of COVID. So all these things were going on at the same time, and it made me think, how can we express that? At that point, I was more into the beginning part of grief, which is the anger, and the sadness and the confusion. But as time went on, and I had talked about this show to the director of this museum, I was getting near the end of the grief process. So I thought it was very interesting to think about which artist I'd like, and how I would like to present grief in a show. So I selected 12 artists, who you see here. And and I put the show together. So I want to just thank all the 12 artists, and I'm going to quickly run through their names. Edgar Arsenault, Lavielle Campbell, Martin Durazo, Juan Escobedo, Alexandra Grant, Carl Handel, Flora Kao, Leslie Sarr, Rick Stevens, Ernie Wolf, the Sweeney Collection, and Dana Weiser. So I'd like to kick off this panel discussion with the artist. And I would like each of you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your practice. A couple of 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Flora Kao. I am primarily an installation artist. This is my work here in the show, The Origami Lotus. I do large-scale work that investigates our relationship to environment and architecture. I make rubbings of collapsed structures, beach, tidal pools, topography, and I also do large installations out of twine, vinyl tubing, kind of responding to sites or materials that call to me. And over the past few years, I've been making increasingly personal work. So this installation is something I created after a season of grief and isolation during COVID as well.
Thank you.
I'm Martin Durazo. I work in multiple approaches, from installation to painting to video. I've also done performance in the past. And my work is concerned with just kind of the examination of human spirituality that lies somewhere between high design and just kind of low punk rock culture, sometimes making use of prison signifiers, and trying to cultivate an understanding for myself of how the human spirit kind of overcomes different situations, and I don't know, how flowers grow out of cracks in the sidewalk.
Great, thank you.
My name is Dana Weiser, and I am a sculptor. I use mostly clay, and I've been getting into embroidery in the last 5-10 years. My work really kind of focuses on Well, I'm a Korean adoptee, so it really focuses on taking traditional Korean artwork and inserting parts of my daily life into the piece, and trying to be part of more of a collective Korean history. And so, yeah, that's what I do.
Great. What I'd like to talk about now is how grief functions both as personal and a collective audience. I think we fail to realize, and I would like to talk about also, that today is Valentine's Day, the day of love, and grief is inextricably connected to this love. The loss and the grief, they're in partnership. Once you experience the grief and the love, once you experience the grief, like most of us don't think about that when you're first falling in love, you know, everything is moon, spoon, and June. But during those initial moon, spoon, and Junes, there's also grief because little things happen, you have an argument, you don't know if you're gonna break up forever, and so it takes you into grief that you're not really you're just recognizing it as sadness. So I would like to know, like, how, after I asked you, and if you would be interested in being in the show, how you used either your grief to express this artwork, or the other way around, how you use the artwork to express your grief. And any of you can start.
I'll talk about my painting that you
Please,
included.
that's the point.
The painting over there is called Clandestino. And
This piece right here.
when Brenda came over to the studio, we looked at a whole bunch of work and had even considered creating some kind of installation. But I think that we found it, I don't know, we both kind of came to the space when we're looking at this piece and kind of these blood red slashes, but at the same time, they were also vibrant kind of energy coming out of clandestine energies, activities, and again, this high and low place that I find interesting. And so I don't know, it's a real layered piece. It took some time to get into, and again, I think I'm just kind of in love with anything clandestine, so.
Yeah, and when I was talking to Martin, he was telling me that he was inspired by, I can see Roy Scheider, I can't think of the name of the movie anymore, but I can see it's All That Dance, All That Jazz. And I was like, yeah, it's got this sort of music and the shiny part to it, but it could also be kind of dark because it sort of looked whirlpoolish. And I really like the idea of him riffing off of.
Yeah, we discussed it. I mean, the entire film is about a man coming to grips with his own death, and it's an ongoing conversation with death, played by Jessica Lange, this beautiful apparition who is just kind of, I don't know, what's this ex machina thing that you're not expecting. And Roy Scheider is this do-it-all choreographer, director, editor. He's simultaneously trying to launch a musical and edit and direct a motion picture. And it's called, the film is called The Stand-Up. And his stand-up comedian talks about the 5 steps of death, leading up to death, you know, and it's fantastic, incredibly powerful, funny, you know, but at the end, I think it really just was the most beautiful ending that ends in a death. So, anyway.
Dana?
Oh, yeah. So my piece is the Yellow Urn. It is titled For Christina, and I made this piece after hearing about this woman, Christina Yuna Lee, who was murdered and stabbed over 40 times in her apartment in New York City. And it happened in 2022 following the COVID and what Trump was calling China flu and the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes. And I was so moved and so saddened and didn't really know how to deal or think about hate. And so I decided to make this piece where I embroidered over 40 knives and embroidered white chrysanthemums because they are a funerary flower. And the color yellow is also a funerary flower in Korean culture. And then pearls felt very much like attending a funeral. And I was, very upset, and I think so this was my response to that murder.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking because this woman was like all of us, she was just coming home after work or an evening, and she saw the person come in behind her, but we're not supposed to be afraid of each other, and she had no idea that this was going to happen. So I just thought this was a beautiful and honorable piece to represent a beautiful life that got taken away too soon. And it's interesting that you say that yellow is also a color of death or funerals, because I thought that just brought a whole lightness to the heaviness of the situation, of the fact that why are these knives on this urn? And I just thought that that just lifted it up, as well as the pearls. It gave it something, elegant isn't the word I wanted to use, but like highly respectful in that way.
So many of my works are about loss and longing, and increasingly over the past few years, when I make these large-scale installations, it's a way for me to process loss and to grieve through the, through the act of making something beautiful over time. So it's like this meditative practice. So in this particular installation, during COVID, my grandfather passed away in Taiwan after, several months in the ICU. And when he was sent home, returned home for hospice, his deathbed was draped in this brilliant yellow color, and there were Buddhist chants playing in the room. And afterwards, the altar where you pay your respects was also draped in this beautiful sacred yellow that you often see Buddhist monks wear. And so I started researching the color, and it signifies the sun and enlightenment. And so, these Buddhist practices, are rituals for the grieving family members, but they're also like these traditions and colors and symbols are also coming, kind of celebrating the state of transition, of moving on to the next life, or hopefully closer to get, move closer to attaining enlightenment. And in Taiwan, where my family is from, in devoutly Buddhist families, the grieving family members fold 108 origami lotus each week for 7 weeks, and they burn the origami lotus to send to the afterlife each week for 7 weeks. So this is the installation of 108 origami lotus, and the images are kind of show you the practice. So those are actual lotus that were burned for the funeral. And you can see it's like a different paper that's used, that's gilded with kind of a sacred print on it. But I really wanted to focus on this color, like being kind of enveloped in this color and thinking about this space as, a meditation on this idea of enlightenment, or, is this, kind of creating a heavenly space. So thinking about this morning ritual that through this meditative act becomes a gesture of resilience and remembrance.
Do you think that as a family, participating in the making every day, does that motion and participation help shed some of that initial energy of grief while you're doing this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because my family would sit around like those round tables with the lazy Susans, and everyone's folding petals. So it's like this communal act of everyone making petals, and then they're all put together into these elaborate lotus. And while they're folding the lotus, they're sharing memories of their lost loved ones. So it's actually a very powerful process.
Great. So I'm curious, the fact that I asked you all to be in this exhibition, what did you think about it when I asked you to think about like grief? Because I didn't know where any of you were in this process when I asked you. So I was wondering, like, were you in the process at the time? Did my requests prompt you to think about grief? How did you come to thinking about the work like that you wanted to submit to the exhibition?
I'll go first. I just don't want to go first all the time, but it's okay. I had a real hard time with it. And I don't mean because it's sad, but I mean, when you came to me with the idea, I was like, what the hell? There's enough grief in the world. Why am I going to have an art show about it? But you and I have known each other for a long time, and I know what you went through. And as we talked, we had to talk about it. We had to talk about why, what was going to be the benefit of exploring this. And I kind of came to really appreciate and respect that you saw my work definitely being part of the dialogue. And so it did give me thought to where it worked and what would work for the show. And even this morning, I thought about you because, I know that losing your mom was like yesterday. And for me, it's been 13 years myself when I lost my mother. And I didn't think about it much. It's just one of those things, you go day to day and you just keep on going. But I thought it was a real healthy thing to have a moment. So that's what I think is pretty fantastic about this show. And boy, did you bring together a really great group of artists. So definitely proud to be part of it.
Thank you. Well, I thought about this a lot because one of the first times I met Martin was through another artist, I'm about to call her Tijani, TJ Norris, and I was like immediately impressed because for me, Martin is joy. Everything he does, it's like light and color and energy and silver, all the things I really love. And I'm like, he has to be my expression of the end of your journey through grief, because it starts off at such a hard place and you're like so confused for so long. You're angry, you're sad, you don't know what to do. And then you start reconciling, the fact that whatever your loss is, whatever it is, and then you start asking yourself, my God, am I going to ever get out of this space? And when I was talking to Martin, I was like, yeah, I want one of your, I call them disco pieces, excuse me. But he was like, I got some other things. So we had a really nice talk about that. And I was really happy that we were able to have a discussion a little bit about it and be able to select this work to be in the show. Dana, any thoughts?
Well, can I follow up just real quick? I'm sorry. Right around the time that we met, I was exploring a body of work that had to do with narco-drug trafficking. This idea of plata o plomo, and for me, it was kind of like how plata o plomo is a term used by narco-drug traffickers. It's like, I can either bribe you or I can kill you. So I was like, how do people exist in this space and still hold on to their humanity and continue to live, those that get to live? And at the same time, the irony that the billions generated with this economic structure have to do with the drug of cocaine, which is meant to supersede any kind of grief. If you're feeling crappy and you have some, you're like, oh, life is great. Let's talk. Let's do this. And going back, you made me think about it because you said your disco work, and I'm like, well, the epitome of the disco era is when cocaine hit the social scene. I think about the movie Blow. When they first start talking, amongst themselves, like how everything's starting to blow up. He goes, well, once the Hollywood, the actors and musicians get into it, and all these Colombian guys are sitting around in their tuxedos goes, oh, actors and musicians, yeah. And they're getting all excited because they just see, things like that. So anyway, again, the irony, the space that is created by something that's not real. So,
Yes.
so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let's see. Well, me and Brenda shared grief. I have a family member who is or has moderately severe dementia, so I am actively in grief and sadness and anger and probably denial, even though it's been a while. So there's that grief, and that I feel like we share. But as for the piece, I feel that's more of like collective grief. I don't know. I'm a proud Minnesotan. Grew up outside of Minneapolis, so I think people know that there's a lot of grief, anger, fear, anxiety.
But even when I met you, let's think about your other work.
Yeah.
You have a tombstone somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Or a couple of tombstones.
I made my sister's too.
Yeah. And I had remembered that when I had asked her to participate in the show because I knew she had that work. I also asked many of the artists if they wanted to, create a new piece specifically for the show. Most of my artist friends are busy. So, and they had work available, which was great. But one of the real reasons is I was like, oh yeah, she made that headstone, But of course you could have done other work, which you have, to represent the death part. But that's one of my reasons why I kind of asked you, is because I knew you had that in case you were too busy, but that would have been really heavy. That would have been didactic, like a tombstone.
I kind of forgot about the tombstone. Sorry. That would make sense.
Yes. And Flora, I knew, but this isn't how I knew of your work. I know of your work from Gallery 825 and that you'd been doing a lot of installations, but I didn't know until I came to visit you about your specific path through grief. So could you talk a little bit about, you don't have to talk about that, it specifically, but how you use work to, go through that period.
So I think when we first started discussing the show, I was just wrapping up a show at the Ontario Museum of History and Art titled The Art of Healing. You know, for that show, I had made this forest of bamboo where I tied salvaged silk, again, like this salvaged silk prayer leaves. So like each leaf was like a wish for solace. You know, I guess over the past 5 years, I've been making work that kind of responds to like catastrophic loss and change in my life. So, you know, while this piece specifically focuses on Taiwanese mourning rituals, and a lot of the work that I've made over the past 5 years are a response to kind of like suddenly, you know, being caught up in like a huge life change where my husband decided he didn't want to be part of our lives anymore, and so kind of like falling into this period of like shock and you know, like complete darkness, and being unable to make work because I couldn't even like function or sleep, and to be able to like, you know, heal from that through my art eventually, you know, after a couple of years, was this process that became so personally meaningful to me. And you know, I have 2 young children, so my life is like this like careening chaos, you know, cyclone of chaos all the time, and my work ends up being the opposite. So it's kind of like the centering, like the eye of the storm, and what I most love is being able to share that moment of serenity or the sublime, and to offer hope for those who might, you know, be experiencing, you know, kind of like the turmoil that life sometimes throws at you. Is probably the most rewarding aspect of my work.
Good, great. What do you guys hope that viewers will carry away with them from experiencing your work, especially having listened to what you've had to say about it today? Do you want them to just experience it, or now that we know more, understand you better culturally, or understand grief through a cultural aspect, or just through your personal aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, for all my installations, I'm hoping that the experience of the work will kind of amplify one's awareness of their relationship to space and the environment, and, you know, to others. You know, while the motivation of making my work can be like highly personal, I'm very much interested in kind of creating these moments of the sublime, where one can reflect on their own moments of grief or healing as well.
Great. Dana?
Let's see. I think I would want people to remember victims of hate crimes, and when I made that piece, it was a feeling that I had of sadness and fear and anger, and I think, so for me it was, to make this piece was very hopeful, and recognizing what, all the emotions I had around this murder. And it really was weird because I've, you hear of other hate crimes, and especially in the Asian American community, I think we talk, and there's crimes that happen that don't get talked about, and so let's see.
But having that, to help you, having that as a reflection, just to even remember the fact that, certain groups, tragedies are amplified a lot louder than some other cultures sometimes. And I feel like your work gave us, the viewer, an opportunity to look and question, like, what your work is about, what do all the symbols mean, and then really think about like what's happening, why we're having all this tragedy, and maybe how we can all get to a place of healing. That's what I saw in your work. So I just wanted to say that about that too. So you, Martin, culturally, like, how do you feel your work in grief affects you? Because, like, you're from LA, right?
Right.
Right, but your cultural background is, let's see, European? No.
Half.
Latino?
The colonizer half is Spanish and European, and Mexican. Yeah,
Okay,
Mexican
right.
family.
So does that, like?
You're getting me. I was going to answer the first question before we get on to the second one.
Sorry.
This opportunity, well, you were asking how do people expect people or to react to the work with knowing the background or the intent of the artist. Well, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about my approach and my intent looking at the work, and I'm thinking about those other two works on paper, and they were just more studies than anything for other paintings. But as I look at them and we have this conversation, we were talking about all that jazz, and recently I kind of caught the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and this idea of this hallucination, abstraction, light abstraction at the end of life, and that we just become part of it all in this vision of a star child. So I'm thinking about the spaciness of the abstraction, but at the same time, there's that one piece that has like this intersection in it, which made me think at the very end, not that I'm blowing this film for you, from 1978. Roy Scheider, it's this beautiful ending, amazing, stage show, and then it goes silent. Right. And it's him inside the body bag being zipped up. And so there's the end is just this white screen of the plastic and this black zipper, and it's over. So I don't know. I'm looking at my work differently, having this conversation about everything we're conversing about. And so you were going to ask me about my culture?
Yes, and how does any of that background, of course it does, influence your work, but maybe how, now that you've thought about it a little bit, has it influenced your work? Because grief isn't something that's on top of mind.
I mean, I was just bringing up the whole plata o plomo and thinking about when I was doing the research on imagery, what colors did I want to use, what movements did I want to make. Of course, I looked at pre-Columbian cultures, this idea of blood sacrifices, this idea of hallucinogenics, this idea of existing on a different plane. And then with the interjection of, you know, European colonization and this thing called Christianity, you know, which people have been decoding that was somehow interpreted by pagan sun worship. So there's all this stuff going on, layer upon layer. So yeah, my culture definitely comes in, but it's very hard for me to just kind of accept, well, yeah, I'm Mexican. Well, no, I'm not. I'm this, and this happened, and you know, all these things that were, I guess, in battle with each other. So that's what I would say about my culture, and trying to see where that puts me living in this culture right now.
Another good question I find is, how do you protect yourself while making emotionally charged work?
I joked about it at the opening, drugs and alcohol, but I'm taking a little more mature, serious tone this time, since we're bringing it. And I would say rest. I make a big, you know, when I'm not making work, I teach for a living, and that the energy that goes out on a daily basis, having to deal with at least 150 personalities, not including, you know, my coworkers and my administration, is exhausting. on a good day. On a good day. So when I get home, I'm just kind of like, you know, kick the dog off the sofa and just say, let me get a space. And the dog jumps back on, but I have to rest at least an hour before I can even think about doing anything. And then sometimes you don't get that luxury. I mean, a lot of people don't. A lot of people, you know, work, and family, kids, whatever, ice, I don't know. You know, it's tough. It's tough to protect yourself. But me, it's taking a time out whenever I can.
Flora?
Well, for me, my art is my respite. So, you know, everything else is like overwhelming and crazy, and like being able to carve out time, even if it's just like a pocket of 10 minutes while I'm waiting for my kid to get out of class or practice piano or whatever it may be, is, you know, something that I cling to, and that's my way of protecting myself from like the demands of daily life.
Ms. Weiser?
Yeah. Let's see. When I work, I really focus on one piece and just try and get it done. And with this piece, then just to, you know, since I stare at these pieces for like months and months, almost a year, and so to be able to finish and put it away, and then come back to look at it again, and just I kind of put it in a different room, and I'll kind of walk around it and just to see how it works.